I gave everything to the family that never saw me, not out of love, but out of duty. And the day I stopped paying was the day I uncovered just how deep their betrayal ran. Now, they want everything back, but I've got the receipts, the rage, and the resolve to make sure they regret ever underestimating me. How could you be so selfish? My father shouted, his face reddening as he paced across the living room of our family's vacation home in Bear Lake. His voice reverberated off the wood-paneled walls, sharp and bitter. Your sister needs that money for her business venture. You have more than enough. I stood frozen, the property tax bill still clenched in my hand, the one I'd just been ambushed with. This was supposed to be a casual Sunday dinner, roast chicken, polite conversation, maybe a board game, but it had turned into something else entirely. An interrogation about why I was no longer willing to bankroll everyone else's life. My name is Louise Walsh, I wanted to say out loud. I'm 33 years old. I've built a successful career as a self-taught day trader. But I didn't say any of that. I just stared at my father, stunned. Every cent I had, I'd earned on my own. No inheritance, no safety net, just thousands of hours of work, sleepless nights, and cold market data. And for the past 5 years, I had quietly paid the property taxes on this very vacation home. I had also taken over Megan's car payments when she couldn't afford them. I'd even chipped in for Mom's surgery when insurance refused. All of it, silently, Dad. I managed, my voice shaking. I've been paying for everything. The property taxes, Megan's business trips, Mom's medical bills. I've never asked for anything. But I can't keep doing this. Mom sat on the couch, her eyes fixed on her hands, folded perfectly. Still, she wouldn't even look at me. That silence hurt more than my father's shouting ever could. We gave you everything growing up, Dad snapped. And now that we need you, you're abandoning us, while your sister is trying to make something of herself. And that's when I saw it. A plain envelope was tucked under a magazine on the coffee table. The top edge of a document peeked out. 2 words caught my eye. Trust fund. My breath caught. I reached forward. Louise, that's private, Dad said sharply, but it was too late. I pulled it free. My hands trembled as I read, Megan Walsh, beneficiary, $350,000. Future provisions. Active. My world tilted. The man who had told me countless times that money was tight, who refused to help me with college tuition, who let me work 3 jobs just to survive, had built a trust fund. For Megan. Only Megan. When were you going to tell me? I whispered, my voice hollow. Dad snatched a document from me. But it was too late. The numbers were burned into my mind. You weren't supposed to see that, he muttered. Clearly. I steadied myself, even as my heart pounded. That explains why I had to take out student loans while Megan went to a private university. Why did she get a car and I took the bus? Why I paid rent with coffee shop wages while she traveled on business trips. My mother finally spoke, her voice soft and sugar-laced. Sweetheart, your sister needs more help. You've always been independent, so capable. We're proud of how well you've done. There it was, the justification. The twisted logic that punished me for my success and rewarded Megan's dependency. All those times I had asked for help and been told we just can't afford it. They'd had the money. It was just earmarked for Megan. I sat back, breathless. A ledger of betrayal began to form in my mind. You said you couldn't afford to help me, I said quietly. But I've been paying nearly $9,000 a year on this house. That roof last summer? That was $12,000. Megan's car? $11,000. And the vacations? $22,400. All of it. Me. Dad crossed his arms. The taxes are due next month. The Ho increased their fees again. He slid the bill across the table. Unbelievable. I took the bill. I'll take care of it, I said quietly. His face relaxed, completely missing the shift in my tone. Driving home to Salt Lake City, the snow-capped mountains that usually brought me peace now loomed like silent judges. My hands tightened on the wheel. I'd been blind, a fool. But that ended now. Back in my apartment, I ignored the phone buzzing. I opened my laptop and pulled up the file labeled Family Contributions. It was a spreadsheet I'd kept half habit, half necessity. I stared at the numbers, now weaponized truths. Property taxes, 43, 500 Megan's car payments, 11, 168 roof repairs, 12, 00 mom's surgery, 8, 200 family vacations, 22, 400 total, 97, 268. I scrolled through payment receipts, bank transfers, and thank you texts. Proof of how I'd been bleeding funds for a family who never intended to lift me up. A ping. Megan, Dad says you're being difficult about the taxes. Don't be selfish, Louise. Of course. To them, I was just a bank. Another ping. Dad, we're counting on you. Don't let us down. I slammed the laptop shut. The next morning, I called Joseph Klein, my financial advisor. 2 hours later, we had a plan. I would get formal documentation of every dollar spent. Joseph introduced me to Victor Hernandez, a forensic accountant. Family conflicts over money get ugly. Joseph warned. I know, I said, but they need to know what happens when the ATM runs out. I walked out of the office feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Power. Victor Hernandez's office was cold in a clinical, efficient kind of way. Sleek black furniture, neutral gray walls. 2 tidy stacks of paper anchored the corners of his desk. He was younger than I expected, maybe early 40s, but with the intensity of someone who had spent his life unraveling tangled financial messes. A man who saw truth not in words, but in numbers. Your documentation is remarkably thorough, he said, scrolling through the files I'd shared. Spreadsheets, PDF scans of checks, annotated transfers. Most people don't keep this level of detail unless they're planning to file a lawsuit. I wasn't planning on anything, I said honestly. I kept track out of habit. Until now. Victor nodded and pulled a legal pad closer. Let's start from the beginning. Give me every category you've contributed to, amounts, dates, recipients, and the reason for each payment. I talked for nearly an hour, listing off years of invisible generosity while Victor took methodical notes. At some point, the emotion of it all began to surface not as tears, but as heat. In my chest, my palms, my voice. When my mom's insurance denied her surgery coverage, they called me. I paid the full amount that day, I said, sharper than intended. When Megan's car was about to be repossessed, they guilted me into making the payment. Told me she was trying to get on her feet. Victor's pen paused. Did Megan ever repay you? I shook my head. Did she ever even offer? No, he scribbled something, then turned his monitor so I could see the spreadsheet he'd been building. By my estimate, your total financial outlay to your family over the last 5 years is $118,745. That's not including the opportunity cost from investments. I leaned forward. Opportunity cost? He nodded. If that money had remained in your trading portfolio, even conservatively estimated, you would have generated about $14,915 in returns. My stomach turned. Total loss to your wealth, he concluded, is over 133. Oh, the number hit like a body blow, not just because of the amount, but because it made something that had felt emotional and abstract into a harsh, quantifiable fact. Victor set down his pen. Do you want to pursue legal restitution? No, I said after a moment. Not yet. I want clarity, and if needed, leverage. Understood. He spent the next few days assembling a notarized statement backed by his credentials and verified by my financial advisor, Joseph. When it arrived in my inbox, 27 pages long, cross-referenced with a summary on the final page, I cried. Not because of the number at the bottom, but because, for the first time in years, the truth was documented. Certified. Mine. Later that week, I took a walk to clear my head. The snow had just started melting in Salt Lake City, and the sidewalks glistened under the evening sun. My phone buzzed every few minutes, texts from Dad, voicemails from Megan. I ignored them all. I wasn't ready. As I rounded the corner of my block, I noticed someone struggling with a grocery bag outside the elevator in my building. A tall man with dark curls, glasses, and a hopelessly torn paper sack. Need help? I asked, braking. My silence for the first time that day. He glanced up, embarrassed. Only if you're skilled in the ancient art of grocery origami. I smiled and grabbed a few rolling apples. I dabble. We introduced ourselves in the elevator. His name was Theo, a freelance architect who had just moved into the apartment 2 doors down from mine. We talked until we reached his floor. Thanks, he said, balancing the now rescued bag. What's your name? Louise. Nice to meet you, Louise. You saved the gala apples. It was nothing, just a moment. But after the days I'd had, the honesty of a stranger was a bomb. Back in my apartment, I stared again at Victor's report. I printed a summary page, circled the total in red ink, and taped it above my desk. 133660. That was the price of 5 years of silence. And now, the silence was over. 3 days later, the first real explosion came. I was sipping lukewarm coffee and reviewing pre-market signals when my phone erupted in buzzing chaos. Missed calls, texts, emails, even a voicemail from my cousin Thomas. Thomas. Hey, just a heads up, your dad's been calling around the family. Says you've abandoned your responsibilities. There's talk of a family meeting this weekend. You should know, they're framing you as the villain. I read it 3 times, my stomach nodding. It wasn't just my parents anymore. They were trying to drag my reputation through the entire family. But they underestimated me. I texted back. Thanks, I'll be there. That evening, I received the official invite from my father's email account. Family check-in Saturday, PM Bear Lake House. No subject line, no details, just veiled expectation. I didn't reply. Instead, I called Victor. I need every document we've compiled. Every receipt, notarized copies, signed affidavits, investment loss projections. All of it. You sure? You want to go nuclear? He asked. They already have. I said flatly. I'm just showing them what radiation looks like. Saturday arrived too fast. I dressed in clean lines, black slacks, navy blazer, and a subtle silver pendant. Power, but not intimidation. I packed a slim leather briefcase with every single page of Victor's report. Theo caught me in the elevator. Big day, he asked, his smile gentle. Family drama. Do you need backup? He offered, half joking. I paused. Maybe after. If I survive, drinks on me? I'll hold you to that. The Bear Lake vacation home, once a sanctuary, now looked like a courtroom in disguise. Cars lined the gravel driveway. Inside, the living room was packed. Aunts, uncles, cousins, even my godparents. Dad stood by the fireplace, gesturing as he spoke. And with Louise stepping away, we're forced to make hard choices about the property. It's unfortunate, but we need to face facts. I cleared my throat. Heads turned. The room hushed. Louise, my father said, with exaggerated relief. You made it. I did. We were just spinning a narrative. I finished, setting my briefcase on the coffee table. Would you like to see the truth? My Aunt Catherine raised an eyebrow. What's this about? I handed out copies of Victor's report summary. Over the past 5 years, I've contributed over $133,000 to this family. Property taxes, Megan's car, medical bills, vacations, every expense documented. While being told there was no money for my education or support, murmurs filled the room. And while I did all this, I continued. My father secretly funded a $350,000 trust for Megan. Just Megan. Silence. Catherine snapped her head toward my parents. Is this true? Mom looked like she wanted to melt into the cushions. Dad's jaw clenched. This is private family business, Uncle Pete stood. Exactly. Which is why it should have been fair. Dad's voice rose. Desperate now. Louise is misrepresenting. I pulled the original trust document from my briefcase and laid it on the table. Megan's name, bold and legal, stared back at everyone. I found this under a magazine, I said. You told me we had nothing, that I was selfish, ungrateful. Megan finally spoke, her voice barely audible. I didn't know the amount. You didn't ask, I said. Why would you? You were always told you deserved it. The room broke into overlapping voices, accusations, justifications, silence from the 2 people who mattered most. I sat back and watched as the image of the struggling parents unraveled. They had spun a lie so long, they believed it themselves. Later, when the meeting dissolved into awkward farewells and quiet apologies, Megan approached me alone. "I'm sorry," she said. "I believe you," I replied, though I wasn't sure. "I want to fix it. You can start by convincing Dad to transfer 25% ownership of this house to me," I said. "I've paid enough to earn that much." She didn't argue. She just nodded and walked away. By Sunday night, I received an email from my father's lawyer. The taxes had been paid. The ownership documents were underway. No apology, just paperwork. Later, a message from Megan. "I've asked Dad to split the trust. He's resistant, but I have allies now." I stared at the screen for a long time before responding, "Thank you." Then, as promised, I walked 2 doors down and knocked. Theo opened the door. "Survived? More than that," I said, smiling. "Ready for those drinks?" He stepped aside. "Come in. Tell me everything." For a week, I barely spoke to anyone outside of market hours. Victor finalized the property transfer documents. 25 of the Bear Lake house was now legally mine. Megan had used a portion of her trust fund to pay the taxes and legal fees. Her text after the confirmation was short but sincere. "It's a start." Surprisingly, the rest of the family stayed relatively quiet. No more accusations. No phone calls begging me to reconsider. It was as if the meeting at the lake house had cauterized something raw. The truth had bled out. And what remained wasn't anger but shame. Shame they'd seen me as an endless resource instead of a daughter, cousin, or a niece. Only Theo remained consistent. Over those quiet days, he and I started seeing each other regularly. Brunch on Sundays, late-night takeout. When I was buried in trades, movie nights on his couch. There was no pressure, no drama, just safety. And laughter. A lot of laughter. I haven't felt this light in years. I admitted to him one night, "That's what happens." He replied, "When you put down a weight that was never yours to carry." But peace was a temporary illusion. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, Joseph forwarded me an email flagged from a financial monitoring alert. The trust fund. There had been unusual activity, withdrawals far exceeding the originally projected allocations. A red flag. I called Megan immediately. "Did you take more money from the trust recently?" "No," she said, confused. "I only approved the tax payment." "Why?" "Because someone withdrew nearly $70,000 last week." Dead silence. "I didn't authorize that," she whispered. "You need to talk to the trustee," I said. She called back the next day, furious. "It was Dad," she said. "He used his co-trustee privileges to borrow against the fund. He said it was for a liquidity issue." I felt the betrayal crack again inside me, like a fault line shifting. What kind of liquidity issue? He wouldn't say just that. "It's temporary," that he planned to reinvest it. Louise, he didn't even ask me. Of course not, because in his mind, it was never really Megan's money. It was his legacy, his control, his illusion of power. "Freeze the account," I said. Today. What followed was a series of heated calls, not just between Megan and Dad, but between Megan and the bank, the trust manager, and the family lawyer. She did it. She froze the account. Then she did something I never expected. She filed a petition to have my father removed as co-trustee. "You're serious?" I asked her. "I told you I wanted to fix this," she said. "Turns out, he doesn't want to. So I will." News spread fast. Uncle Pete called the next day, stunned. Aunt Catherine texted me to say she admired Megan's courage. And I felt something I hadn't felt since I was a teenager. Hope. The tide had turned. And not just in my favor, but just when I began to feel safe. Another message arrived. Not from my parents. Not from Megan. From the family lawyer. Subject: potential contest of ownership. Buddy, your father has requested a review of the recent Bear Lake property transfer. He's asserting that the transaction occurred under emotional coercion and without his full informed consent. Please be advised that formal proceedings may follow. My blood ran cold. He was trying to take it back. He was trying to erase everything.